Test, test. Oh. Well, good evening, everybody. Good evening. Hope everyone had a good day today. I hope everyone's week is going smoothly. But knowing the nature of how weeks go, I'm sure there's been some roller coaster ride going on, some ups, some downs. Just the nature of weeks. So we're going to start with announcements. The only one I really know of is Sunday following service. We're going to have a wedding shower for Brother Steve and Sister Bailey. Are they in here? No? All right. Well, that's directly following service. We were asking if we could have a few volunteers after the lesson tonight to move 4 of these tables out of these doors and into the library office over here. Oh, this office. Okay, next to the closet. Okay. Oh, this office, the music office. I thought you meant that library area right there. We just need them folded up and rolled in there. It's perfect. Okay. Thank you. All right. So we'll start with some prayer requests. Does anybody have anything they need prayer about today? Sister Nancy. Okay. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am. All right. Sister Amanda. Right? Yes. Oh, it's not major? Okay, good. Oh, no. All right. Anyone else? If y'all will just be in prayer for me tonight as I try to deliver this lesson. Anyone else? Okay, let's take it to the Lord in prayer. Okay, so let's just get straight into it. I was tasked with teaching we're teaching from a book called You Were Made for This Moment, following the book of Esther and the story of Esther. And so last week, I believe, was it Sister Ashley? I was in the married group, so I didn't get to hear, but from what I understand from what I read, you guys covered Esther chapter 6, where King Ahasuerus, King Xerxes, a.k.a. Xerxes, finds out through a reading of the history of the Chronicles that there was an attempt on his life, or they were planning an attempt on his life, and it was overthrown by Mordecai. He hears for the first time that he owes his life to this man. Unbeknownst to him, he is a Jewish man. timely as ever, Haman appears at that very moment, and the king calls him in and asks him, "What shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor?" Haman, in all of his self-importance and arrogance, immediately assumes that the king means to honor him. And so, of course, he tells the king how he would like to be honored should he have been the man he was honoring. And then he has to endure the sight of the one man he hates more than anyone else in the kingdom, delighting in the joy of being honored in the way in which he prescribed to the king, thinking that it would be him getting to kind of bask in that spotlight. Depressed and seething with rage, he goes home and gushes to his wife and the counselors in his household of what was transpired. Essentially, they warn him not to trifle with God's chosen people. Good advice. They have a reputation of rising and defeating any foe against the odds. In due time, generally, the Lord's chosen people come out on top. So today, I'm going to talk to you about how the wicked will not win, and specifically how God's chosen people have always had protection in God's hand over their lives, and they, in due time, always rise to the top. So here's Haman, and we've all known personalities like Haman. He's charismatic. He's educated, probably. He's polished and flashy. He could charm birds from off the trees. These people have strong personalities. They're strong conversationalists. And they have a keen ability to anticipate a person's thoughts and say the very thing they need to hear at the very time they need to hear it. They can be manipulative users. They have an inflated sense of self, and there's always an angle that will benefit themselves. Usually these types of personalities or people are social climbers that will step on anyone to promote their own self-interest. These are Hamans, right? Loyalty is fluid, if you can call it loyalty. They shift their loyalty to the person that can get them closer to where they want to be and where they want to go. And then as soon as they master or climb to the rung on the ladder they're trying to achieve, they generally will drop that person that they used to get there. They've served their usefulness. They're done. These are the Hamans of the world. And these people, as frustrating as it can be, generally do arrive. They generally will become wealthy or popular or gain in stature or power, as is their desire, because they're really, really good at hiding who they really are. People are drawn to flashy because they want to live in the afterglow or the secondhand light of the flashy to be successful by default because they're close to this person who is successful. These people we know to be little Hamans. The thing about the Hamans of the world is this: sooner or later, and in due time, their true colors usually always shine through. Their self-interest, their hunger and greed for power, wealth, or whatever it is that they're trying to get in life, and the people that they've stepped on and the things that they've done to get there does not stay hidden. It usually has a way of coming to the light. And then we have the opposite of the Hamans. We have the Mordecais of the world. The Mordecais in the world live quietly in the shadows. These people do not seek spotlight. They are happy to be worker bees behind the scenes. They are not attention seekers, and they live with honest intentions and integrity. They are not flashy. In fact, they generally go unnoticed. When they work hard and others are recognized for what they've achieved, sometimes their name is forgotten or not mentioned, even though they put in as much work as the other person did with very little to no recognition. But when this happens, they generally don't make a fuss because, after all, they didn't do it for the recognition in the first place. These people are those that affect real change in the world. The Mordecais are the ones that work quietly in the shadows, and they work for the greater good, not for their own self-interest. These are the ones who are the real world changers. They're the ones that have nothing superficial about them. They're genuine, and they're loyal to a fault. So here we are in the story. Esther has asked King Xerxes for another banquet with him and Haman. She's already asked for one. He said, ask for anything and I'll give it to you. And she said, I just want a banquet with you. It was sort of a teaser, I guess, where she just wants to get him comfortable and she wants to make Haman comfortable and she wants to just lavish them with attention. And then when he extends the offer for another favor, ask anything, she asks for just one more banquet. So here they are. He again tells her anything, just anything you want. So she asks for his mercy for her people. At this point, King Xerxes was ignorant to her nationality. He was ignorant to who her people were. And he had already allowed the ever-glittering Haman to influence him into signing an order, a decree, to annihilate all of the Jewish people. As it turns out, it appears that he really adores and loves Queen Esther and realizes that because of Haman's deceit and because of his ego and his manipulation, that means that he's going to have to sacrifice his queen. He gets angry. He storms out into the garden, and when he comes back, he gets back just in time to see that Haman has collapsed on the couch with Esther, where she is sitting. And assuming the worst, Haman loses it. And he has Haman hooded and hanged from the very gallows that were designed to kill Mordecai, his enemy. But the king cannot rescind an order. I didn't know this until I read this book, but I did not realize that when a king during that time put his seal to a decree and it went out to the people, he could not take it back. So instead, he knew, I'll just amend it. I will do what my queen asks, but I'll amend my original order to say that the Jews may take up arms in their own defense. 9 months later, the Jews overtake the armies of Xerxes and are revered and elevated in the kingdom, and all is well with the people of God. And all of this death and destruction was because of one man's ego, Haman. So, a little object lesson. We've all heard the phrase, they mix about like oil and water. So I brought, how long has it been since the adult class had an object lesson? So I brought a little canister with water and olive oil, and you'll notice that the oil has risen to the top. And of course, if you're someone in here who cooks and you've made vinaigrettes or salad dressings or whatever, you know that even when I flip it around and shake it up, it's going to mix for a minute, but then eventually that oil is going to float and rise right back up to the top. So the reason for this, I looked it up because I was curious. Oil and water doesn't mix because water is a polar molecule, and I'm going to have to read this because I'm not scientific. It is a polar molecule with a positive charge on one end and a negative charge on the other, while oil is a nonpolar molecule with an even charge distribution. This difference in polarity leads to a strong attraction between water molecules and a lack of attraction between water and oil molecules, causing them to separate. There's this phenomenon called like dissolves like in science. The principle of like dissolves like explains this phenomenon. Polar molecules tend to dissolve in other polar molecules. So water, being a polar molecule, can dissolve into itself or other type substances, right? Because they are both polar. While nonpolar molecules dissolve in other nonpolar molecules, but they cannot, a polar cannot dissolve into a nonpolar, and vice versa. So I started thinking about Christianity and the world, right? The Hamans and the Mordecais. You have the humility and the long-suffering and the love and the not self-serving nature of what a Christian should be. And it does not mix with the world, which is very much self-interested, self-centered, and pretty much the opposite, the polar opposite, if you will, of what you're supposed to be. And so if we were looking at this, then the Christians of the world that are bearing the fruits of the Spirit would be the oil that rises to the top. These are God's people. And even when you shake it, it cannot mix with the world. If it really is Spirit-filled, if you really are led by the Spirit, you really are living out what the Word says, then it doesn't matter how much you shake this. You're not going to be part of that water. You're always going to be set apart. Pride and humility are like oil and water. They're opposites. Good and evil, polar opposites. Sin and righteousness, polar opposites. Condemnation and mercy are polar opposites. Polar opposites that cannot and will not ever coexist. We cannot coexist with the world. We were supposed to be set apart from the world. One must always give way to another. One rises and one falls. But when we follow what we know to be truth with the Lord, when we follow Jesus, we take up our cross and we follow after him, he ensures that we will not be the one that falls. We will be the one that rises. Oil floats on water because it is less dense than water. Density refers to how much mass is packed into a given volume, and water is denser than oil, meaning it contains more mass in the same amount of space. When oil is placed in water, the buoyant force exerted by the water is greater than the weight of the oil. See, I was thinking oil would be heavier. Turns out that's not so. Buoyant force is an upward force that opposes gravity. And in this case, it's strong enough to cause the oil to float. In other words, God designed us. God designed his people. God designed the Israelites, the Jewish people, and all of us, his children, to have buoyant force in the world. This is why the scripture reinforces to us that no weapon that has been formed against us shall prosper. Why over and over again we see that what was designed to harm us was turned around for good. And this is kind of how it is with the story of Esther. Haman meant devastation and annihilation for the Jewish people. But then God raised Esther up at just the right moment. And he strengthened her and Mordecai. And he used them for a purpose. And he turned what was supposed to be the annihilation of an entire people to now they're the most respected in the land. They're the most revered in the land. So much so that people are like, you better not mess with them. They are God's people. Don't touch them. If you touch them, to them it was probably very much like a curse. Very much like a curse. Don't touch God's people. And they had a reputation for rising. No matter what, always rising. So we have these two personalities. We have the Hamans, we have the Mordecais, and they mix like oil and water. Sometimes, actually most of the time, the most authentic, the most powerful entity is the one that is the most unassuming in nature. It's hardly, if ever, the attractive choice. I take you to the baby in a manger. Many missed his coming because they were expecting this king in all of this royal and extravagant garb, riding on a gallant steed and with a sword drawn and fully armed, just coming in strong, right? This is what they imagined the Messiah coming to the world to look like. No one realized he would come so humbly to the world. They missed his coming because they failed to understand that he chose to make his appearance in a barn, surrounded by animals and animal feces and the smell thereof. This is the king, the Messiah, the one who would reign and rule and conquer the enemy in a barn, born in a barn, born naturally of a woman, a baby. He sure doesn't look like a king. No pomp, no circumstance, no trumpets, no fanfare, no hoopla. Just a plain old baby born in a plain old barn to a typical Jewish mother and father in a typical old barn and laid in a dirty old manger. But in due time, he was meant to rise. Fast forward about 33 years, and this same baby has grown into a very modest, moderate man and is riding into Jerusalem not on a giant white horse, but on a donkey, as people wave palm leaves in celebration. Wearing humble clothing, sitting atop a common, nondescript animal, he was not dressed in fine linens. He was not holding a golden sepulchre. He was not wearing a golden bejeweled crown on his head. He did not look much like a conqueror. He did not enter the city as a king. He looked more like a servant because that's what he was and that's what he came to do. He came to serve. He came with a purpose only he understood, embarking on a mission only he could do, only he was equipped for. He came to conquer, but not in the sense that people thought. He came so that he could conquer death, so that he could conquer sin, so that he could conquer temptation. He could conquer the flesh. And then he overcame death, hell, and the grave. So they didn't expect this. They expected something different. He came with nothing but love and compassion in his heart. He came to overcome sin, hell, and the grave. This was spiritual warfare. Everyone expected physical. This was spiritual warfare for which he was completely equipped. But that was not what the people were expecting. Only he knew that he was going to the cross. He would lay hints to his disciples here and there. And he would lay hints to sometimes the Pharisees. In 3 days, this temple will be destroyed, and in 3 days, I will raise it up again. And they all took him to mean the physical, literal temple. And that's not what he was referring to. He knew he had to go to the cross, but he also knew that he would rise again 3 days later. Quietly, unassuming, like a Mordecai. Quietly, unassuming, he went, a lamb to the slaughter, covered in blood, unable to remain upright at times as he's carrying his cross. Not fighting back in word or deed, he appeared weak. My God, why have you forsaken me? When he uttered those words, it maybe didn't instill a whole lot of confidence in people. It sounds weak. It sounds kind of scary. Seeing him pierced and carried off to be placed in a tomb probably felt defeating to his followers. Seeing him carried, dead and limp, off to a tomb probably felt so defeating to his followers, but empowering to his tormentors. But in due time, he would rise. The author uses the word peripety in the book. It's just kind of a fancy term for plot twist. During the 3 days that Esther was fasting, it didn't appear that anything was changing. On the outside, everything stayed the same, maybe even intensified a little bit. But after 3 days, the course of history was forever changed. It only took her 3 days of prayer and fasting, and it probably didn't feel to her like a whole lot was going on. But in the spiritual realm, a lot was happening. God had heard, and Xerxes found favor in his queen. She was able to serve her people from certain destruction, and the Jewish people were not only saved, but elevated in their place in this society. They were respected and feared. They were looked up to, and it only took 3 days. Jesus' body lay dead in a tomb, lifeless. It didn't look much was happening in the natural. But in the supernatural, he overcame, roaring like a lion. And then after he overcame death and the grave, and that he was transformed from a poor, average Jewish man to a fearsome, powerful royal king over all eternity. Revelation 1:12-18 says, "And I turned to see the voice that spake with me. And being turned, I saw 7 golden candlesticks. And in the midst of the 7 candlesticks, one like the Son of Man, clothed with a garment down to the foot, and girt about the paps with a golden girdle. His head and his hairs were white like wool, as white as snow. And his eyes were as a flame of fire, and his feet unto fine brass, as if they burned in a furnace. And his voice was as the sound of many waters. And he had in his right hand 7 stars. And out of his mouth went a sharp 2-edged sword. And his countenance was as the sun shineth in his strength. And when I saw him, I fell at his feet as dead. And he laid his right hand upon me, saying unto me, Fear not, I am the first and the last. I am he that liveth and was dead, and behold, I am alive forevermore. And I have the keys of hell and of death. This is the king they envisioned coming in the first place. But notice this is revelation. No one has seen this Messiah yet. Just John in his prophecy, in his revelation. But no one has seen this. No one has even seen him in his full glory yet. And so we don't want to be discouraged by the Hamans of the world that seem all powerful. They seem glitzy and glittery and impressive. We don't need to be discouraged by those people. Watching them succeed and surpass us in earthly or worldly possessions and status, despite their ugly heart and their spiteful ways, in due time, God will raise you up. God will have our reward, and he'll have theirs too. Stay the course. Stay the course. There's a reason the Bible places so much emphasis on humility, meekness, long-suffering, and temperance. He will fight your battle and he will win, but all in due time. That's why we have to run with patience. This is not a sprint. This race is long distance. The end is known. We know that the wicked will not win, but the time frame is like a cross-country course. We cannot see the finish line for all the hills and the trees and the countryside. It's far, which is why it tells us this in Scripture. They that wait upon the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings as eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not be faint. Isaiah 40:31. So don't question why you're still walking the chalk line when others that may seem not to be are reaping more benefit than you. When you look around and you see other people gaining in things and you're still staying the same, but you're grinding every day and you're living your life with integrity and you're living your life with conviction, and you see others that aren't, and they're very flippant with the way they treat religion, if they even acknowledge religion at all, and you're wondering, why am I not getting at least an equal amount of blessing? I'm sacrificing so much. Don't be discouraged, because in due time you will reap that blessing, whether it's here on this earth or in the heaven realm to come. You are going to be realized. We are laying up treasures in heaven, treasures that cannot be destroyed by moth and rust. All of this, everything you see in this room, everything back at your house that you value so much, everything that you see is going to perish. And someday it will burn. And so it's of little consequence, really. What we need to be concerned with is not the Hamans of the world that seem to be gaining so much here. We need to be focused on what we're to gain in the life to come. What are we storing up in heaven? When we concern ourselves like Jesus did while he was going to the cross with things eternal, we will reap that blessing. The wicked only win when the righteous allow them to shake up their faith. So remember, when I shake this, right, it looks mixed. But when it sits and settles for a minute, all of that oil is going to rise right back up to the top. So when the wicked or the world shakes us up and our faith just feels weak and it feels like it's just falling apart, we have to be like Paul when he says that we should rejoice in our suffering. That's how we know that we've really irritated hell. If you're a child of God, no matter how shaken you've become, just know that the oil always rises to the top. Stay true. Stay to the course. Keep living your life with integrity. Keep living your life with conviction, and you will rise. It's separate and holy and has qualities that water does not have. You are called to be separate and holy. You have qualities that the world does not have. Oil cannot dissolve into the elements around it, and the elements around it cannot invade it. It's truly set apart. This water cannot infiltrate the molecule of oil. It cannot pervade. So just keep yourself on the straight. When that same old frustration, I had one today, literally 2 hours ago. When that same old frustration rears its ugly head tomorrow morning, or in my case, 2 hours ago, remind yourself that you are fighting a war and you're winning, even though that's not how it feels in the moment, and that may not be what it appears like right now. You're winning. Appearances, like Mordecai, like David, like Mary, like the unlikeliest of people that you've seen all throughout the Bible, David, Daniel in the lion's den, all of these people, unassuming, they were the underdog, and many times unnoticed or even hated. Appearances like these people, Mary, just a young girl that was one day by herself, and an angel visited her out of nowhere, right? And she said, "Be it unto me," and then she birthed the Messiah. Just unassuming, average, run-of-the-mill people. Appearances are deceiving. In the temporal realm, winning doesn't look like winning, and losing looks a lot like losing. When we feel we are losing, it is because we have done something to cause the demons in hell to tremble, and they want to rise against us, and they want us to sink to the bottom. They don't want us rising. They don't want us. They know that their days are numbered, and they don't want that. And they're raging against us, and they're raging against our families, and they can't win unless we submit. If we ignore the call of Jesus to follow after him and take up our cross daily, and I mean daily, we all have situations. We all have trials. We all have conflicts. We all deal with traumas. We all deal with addictions. We all deal with so much. And all of us could be dealing all of that at once, right? We could be hurt today. If we ignore and we don't take up our cross daily, they win. And life could be easier here, but eternity won't. When we give up and we give in to what the demons are wanting, and I don't feel like going to church this morning, I think I'll just stay home, and that becomes a habit. I don't feel like reading my Bible, and so that becomes a habit. And I just want to leave it all for a while. I just want to go away I'll come back eventually. Eventually usually doesn't come. We have to make sure we're fighting every day, fighting that flesh and not giving up. We have to take up our cross daily. Because if we don't, they win, and our eternity might be in jeopardy. Living for Jesus is a daily sacrifice. It's a fight to the death, but eternally, we win. We will all rise as Jesus did, and the wicked will not win. And that's all I have. It's a little early, guys. But anyway, would anyone like to share anything about this lesson or this book so far that maybe you've learned or made you think? Or okay. Okay. Yeah, I think that's an awesome example. I think the Lord honors sometimes, and I will be very transparent. Luke's my witness. I have a real hard time keeping my mouth shut sometimes, but I think when we use wisdom, I'm just being honest, guys. But when we use wisdom, and I learned a really hard lesson. When I was in my late 20s, I was going through something, and there was a very antagonistic person in my life. It just seemed like every time I got a text message, I would just kind of inside, I would just kind of panic a little. I would just have like an anxiety attack before I ever even opened the message to see what it said, because I was already anticipating that it was going to be a conflict. I don't know if you guys have had people like that in your lives. Like every time if you see their name pop up in your caller ID, you're like, ugh. And you're just like, God, help me right now. But I had to learn. When I got back in church, it's almost like the Lord dealt with me in that way, teaching me to just don't react. Just listen. Hold your peace. Use some wisdom. Don't respond if you can't without losing your Holy Ghost. Just hold it, just don't respond. No response is better than a hateful, antagonistic one. And I think the Lord honors that. I had a situation with my daughters. It was, I was going through a divorce, and so there was a situation. He was trying to make it to where I had to move back and I had to be restricted. Well, my whole family's here, and this was an hour and a half away, and I'm a single mom with twins. And so I needed my support system. He was trying to make it to where I had to stay there. And I understand you want to be close to your kids, so that I understood where he was coming from, but I needed my family. And so I was fighting this. And so anyway, every little thing was just a problem. And so I had to learn that when he would try to bait me on a text message, just be silent. Just back off. If he called and had a hateful comment, just don't respond. It took me a while to learn this, but once I did, I started noticing that those antagonistic comments and those antagonistic text messages and stuff were less and less and less. And then eventually he agreed to remove that restriction on my domicile. And so the Lord actually rewarded my wisdom there. He was showing me in a very big way in my life at that time that, hey, if you'll follow my word and you'll do what it says and you'll try to live at peace with all men, that doesn't mean you have to be someone's whipping post. It actually shows tremendous strength not to respond. And it shows tremendous character not to respond, and it does not go unnoticed. And so he did bless me and reward me in that. And I never saw that coming. I just got a phone call one day from my lawyer. She's like, he dropped it. And I was like, out of nowhere, and it was like, oh, okay. So anyone else want to add to anything? Okay. All right. Well, let's just pray and be dismissed.